Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. I have literally just come away from my conversation with Marty Davies. Marty is, firstly, a wonderful friend of mine. We are working together solidly at the moment to deliver the first ever Trans History Week. It's taking place from the 6th to the 12th of May, and it's all about showing people that trans people have always been here through different communities, cultures, and continents, and kind of really tackling this rhetoric around trans being a new thing, a contagion, as Marty says, and just shining a light on trans history, because trans history is history. Marty is also an expert when it comes to advertising, brands, campaigns, marketing. Her company, Smarty Pants, has been around for years. She's the joint CEO of Advertising, a columnist, first ever queer trans columnist for Campaign magazine. But I was super excited to spend time with Marty, quality time away from planning, to get to know her life story. And she has a wonderful story. So I'm hoping that you enjoy it. Please like and share it. And yeah, listen in because it's just brilliant. Cheers. Marty, good morning and welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Thanks for having me.
I just got a first question to ask you. Are you not sick of me yet?
No, I love you. No,
Um,
yeah, no, I love getting closer to you and working with you on all of the projects we've been working on.
So, just for context for those who are listening, Marty and I are currently working together and chatting every day for the first ever Trans History Week, which is really exciting. And we're going to come on to that shortly. Marty, you are, like many guests on this podcast, many things. Amongst us queer folk, we often talk about the day job and the gay job. And I think with yourself, you're someone where that is so intertwined. You are an advertising, marketing, brand, and campaigning expert. You are a public speaker, writer, and the founder of Trans History Week. Where do you get the time to fit into all of it, and what does it all mean?
God, okay. I think where do I get the time to fit it all? I don't think I have the time. I think I'm just burning out constantly. I need to be much better at managing my time and my well-being. So I'm gonna try and cut back on some of it. But um, I just made a decision like a few years ago just to follow what made me passionate and what was interesting to me. And I think because I'm so interested and passionate about all the things I do, I end up doing them all the time. And so I don't get that fatigue of, oh, can't wait for to go home and start working. Like I love all of the things I'm doing. They don't feel like work. I think that's why I end up doing like a huge amount. Just can't sit still. I think, ADHD, all of that stuff.
The
Um,
joys of being neurospicy.
yeah, so yeah, that's why I end up doing an awful lot. And yeah, I just get excited about new things. So I'm always like looking for a new thing to kind of create, a new movement to build, a new something to do. So yeah, that's why there's loads of things.
So no one day looks the same.
No, no, and that's what I love. I love that.
Love that. What tell us about Smarty Pants?
So Smarty Pants Consultancy, that's my business that I started 6 years ago. So I started that um, because I just was feeling not very included in the advertising industry. I was feeling kind of like constrained by being in different agencies. And I just wanted to build something for myself and feel kind of free from it and feel like I could exist as myself in that industry and not be kind of not have to kind of like go for so many interviews and be told that I lack gravitas and all of this kind of stuff, right? So I just forged my own path and it was really scary. Um, and essentially what we've done is, with Smarty Pants is, built it into a 250,000 like turnover business. Like we have been in global teams, like working on their proposition development and their strategy for their customer activation campaigns with businesses like Just Eat Takeaway, with Go Compare. And so that's what I've been doing for the longest time and bringing in other people that share my mission to kind of share in the work, right? And and I suppose what it's now becoming more like or turning more into is I'm just letting Smarty Pants be a vehicle for what drives my passions and what drives my interests. And it's evolving and shaping and morphing as that changes. And that has changed a lot over the last few years to bend more into the LGBTQI plus advocacy, DE&I space, what representation in the work, like how we accommodated within product and service design. So yeah, all of those different things. So yeah, it's constantly changing, but essentially it's my baby that helps me do what I want to do, and that's what I love about it.
Amazing. And it shines through in your writing, regular columnist, award-winning campaigns and stuff. So absolutely love. Let's talk about your newest baby, Trans History Week.
Wow, yes. So Trans History Week, I'm so excited about Trans History Week.
It's
Um,
so soon. It's so soon.
I feel like I blink and there's a week that's gone by and I can't believe it. I think it's like, is there 11 days now or 10
Yeah.
days? So it's, oh, okay. And it's just super scary. It's almost at single digits, right? So Trans History Week, it's about celebrating the millennia-old history of trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and intersex people, and any way that you choose to describe and define your gender, essentially, um, gender diversity throughout history. And what I love about this project is kind of it started from a point of me learning about some of my own trans history that I didn't know, right? I learned about a period of history um, from Weimar, Germany, and it was the Nazi raid of the world's first trans clinic, which will be 91 years ago on the on Trans History Day, right? The first ever Trans History Day, which will be on May 6th, and the beginning of Trans History Week, May 6th to 12th. So learning about that was just like a massive surprise to me. And, it's a huge part of our history that we learn about the Holocaust, but I didn't know that there was a trans clinic back then, right? Um, and so learning about that made me think, what else do I not know about my history? What else is there out there? What other stories are there? And it started off as an article in Queer AF, but then that article became quickly used by people to shut down the idea that trans people are new, that
Mm.
we're a trend, we're a social contagion, all of these different things that dehumanize us as language and kind of position us as yeah, new and novel and one thing. Um, and so it was really fascinating to watch how that article was used. And it made me think, which is not a new idea, but I didn't really have the ambition to create a week or anything with it. But it was just, wow, our history isn't just like Antiques Roadshow. Oh, this is cute and it's old and it's worth this amount of money. It's like, oh, it actually is very powerful in helping us understand ourselves and where we've been and where we might go next and what we can learnings we can take from our past as well. And if we don't know our history, how if like a population or like a community doesn't have a history or isn't shared that history, kind of denies them of their humanity. And so it started off thinking, well, actually, this really does shut down this idea that we're new, and that's really, really powerful. To just celebrate our history can shut down this toxic, awful rhetoric that is damaging us and currently working to take away our rights. But really, what I discovered from it as well is the well-being that I got from it, just from feeling like I've always been here, my community's always been here, and in some parts of sometimes thrive, sometimes like absolutely be venerated as well in communities. It made me feel like I belong here right now. And I didn't know how important it was for me to hear that message and to feel that message. So just learning history makes you feel that way. And I've seen that when we've brought in more volunteers, I've seen the well-being that it brings. So now I kind of think about the whole project differently. I think about it as being a well-being centered project first. It's trans history for trans people to instill that sense of well-being and investing in trans creatives to tell those stories. Um, so we can invest in trans futures. And yeah, it helpfully just shuts down all of this awful rhetoric about us.
Absolutely. Trans people have always existed, just because the language and the terminology is not the same, but across different kind of like cultures, communities, and continents. So it's crazy. I know how passionate you are about community. We've spoken about it before. I'm going to ask you, when it comes to anti-trans rhetoric and what's going on right now, what does the world look like for Marty Davies right now in terms of needing that community?
Um, yeah, I mean, I work in advertising, right? So like a few years ago, I didn't know any trans people in advertising. And then I found one when I was at Mighty Hoopla Festival. And then we created a community together called Trans Plus Adland. And now there's like 50 people in that group. And this the community is so important. So just looking at it from just that lens of that advertising and creating that community with Jax Kenrick, um, I found I found that so helpful for me understanding my identity better, for me feeling more comfortable, feeling safe to share things, feeling like I wasn't crazy to feel certain things about certain places or certain things that people were saying. I really feel that just creating those community spaces to just be is really valuable. And it can be really difficult when you're kind of a small part of the population to feel that you can just be and exist. Um, and so those community spaces are really valuable to me. And I find myself creating the spaces. I find myself creating the community. I just get excited about bringing people together, and and really a lot of it is like a selfish pursuit. I just want a community for myself, and then it just so happens that everybody else benefits from being part of that. Then, um, but I love seeing people connect with each other, and I love making those connections and seeing people thrive, like changing their pronouns, like trying new names, like doing things, that they don't feel comfortable trying in their workplace. So yeah, community is really important. And I suppose with Trans History Week, kind of doing that again, like creating a community around a mission. That's essentially what we're doing here. Trans Adland is just creating the community for the sake of it, for just to be. But Trans History Week is creating a community around a mission to
Yeah,
create that space for all of us to learn our history,
yeah,
like trans people and allies. But I'm particularly interested in trans people learning our history because we don't know it. I don't know it. I'm not a historian. I deliberately hold that hat proudly of like an ignorant trans person. I don't know anything about my history and I'm trying to learn it. I feel like, that Dunning-Kruger effect where the more you know you don't know.
yeah.
And now because I'm starting to learn some of my history, I'm feeling really anxious that I don't know anything. That's the like kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect. So my confidence in conveying trans history is super low at the moment because I've just started my journey on learning it.
Super low, but wow, what a way to go in. What a way to kind of brush up on your knowledge. And you know, it's a movement, it's a mission, but it is also empowering people, especially in light of all the bullshit that the trans and gender non-conforming communities are facing right now.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I remember I was at National Student Pride actually this year that I remember Joe Lycett actually saying on stage that they like to instead of being anti things, they like to be pro things. And I thought that was a really good message to give people. And I kind of thought about that in connection with what we're doing with Trans History Week. And I think that's what we see there's a tendency when we kind of see a lot of anti stuff going on to get really frustrated, angry, get anti and yourself. Um, and that's very valid as well. And there are mechanisms to do that. But that thing from Joe Lycett, that about being pro things, and also Danny St. James and Not a Phase. And they've had Not a Phase is an amazing charity that focuses on joy, trans joy, and it just does that really well and has, I think, like 1,500 service users now. And it has a real clear mission to be being pro something, right? So for me, it's about being pro investing in the trans community. It's be about being pro kind of our history and celebrating that history. And by being so pro these things, you are shutting down awful rhetoric about us, and you are hopefully also changing minds. It's not the core purpose of this project to kind of change cis minds, but it is. I just think that if you surface our history, and it can only do good. It can
Yeah.
only do good.
Bring everyone along on the journey. And I often say to people, whether it's trans people or minorities more broadly, is look beyond the barriers and challenges, the statistics to the people who are just trying to live their lives as authentically and freely and joyfully as they can.
I think that's what's nice. Yeah, like one of our lessons actually in the workbook is we're more than trans.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we've got 4 lessons in our workbook, and yeah, one of them is that, and it's about recognizing the huge variety of kind of talents within the trans community and the contributions of that community through time. The person that came up with the idea of hand washing being good for hygiene was a trans person. Um, there's huge contributions to society that trans people have made. Um, and people like Sophie, who's, was a genius in electronic music space. So I really love that lesson, and like giving people the space to be more than this identity that is kind of perceived in a very singular way and stereotypical way, um, within our popular media, our mainstream media.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it can be the biggest thing about us, in these moments. But day to day, it really is just fundamentally quite a small part of who we are and what we show up as and do in the world. So
Yeah, it absolutely should be. And I think it's magnified by the barriers that we face
yeah,
and that's when it becomes such a huge part of your identity, because it's causing so many it's in society, it seems like it's causing a lot of barriers for you. So you need to kind of focus on it for those reasons. But really, there shouldn't be any barriers. Our society should be set up to um, be fair and equal and just for everybody, right? But that's why it becomes such a magnified part of your identity. Like, I'm spending a lot of my time focusing on trans things because I'm talking about trans history. But it's because I'm somebody that cares about justice. I'm somebody that cares about community. I'm somebody that cares about rights and culture and like history. These are the things about me that are more than trans, but then I'm just focusing it on something that I, really care about.
well, I am so excited for Trans History Week. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm really excited to dip into your origin story and again, just shining a bit more light on your story and who you are and those other little elements of what makes Marty Davies Marty Davies. So thanks for joining me. Are you ready to pause and rewind?
I am. I love this concept as well. I have to say, I love the concept, and I was looking over your questions just before as well, and I'm excited to talk about things that I haven't really spoken about for a long time or thought about for a long time.
That's it. It's good to reflect. So let's do it. Take me back. Tell me all about little Marty.
Little Marty. So Little Marty. I mean, I had like a lot of siblings, so I'm like one of five. Um, so I had kind of a brother 1 year older than me and another brother like a year and a half younger than me. So we were kind of like a little squad. Um, and we would play football together. We would play like Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario and all these things together. We were very like lucky to have things kind of for us. We had things like game systems. We were treated to things like I remember getting my N64 for Christmas in a big box and like having that really joyful moment of opening that and playing GoldenEye. I used to play roller hockey around the cul-de-sac that we were in. This is the kind of upbringing that I had. So I was very sporty, I would say, and very sociable. Um, Probably in mainly due to like having siblings. And so I was always the person going out the house, like making friends with next door neighbors, like all of that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, like little Marty. I've got a picture of myself that my mum took where I had a daisy chain on my head. It's such a gorgeous picture. And I remember like spending ages making daisy chains. I mean, how queer is that?
Same.
Um,
I used to make them too. Love it.
so yeah, and it's just like all of my pictures are like I'm posing for a catalog, like I don't know what, like a Debenhams type catalog type thing. I don't know why, but like my brothers all like stood there like that, and I'm like posing for a catalog picture. Um, and I remember always being surrounded by girls as well. I had lots of friends that I would go over their house after school, um, and play with their trolls. Do you remember
I
trolls?
loved the troll. I had a karate troll with pink hair.
I didn't have any trolls, but like my friend had all of the trolls that existed in the world. So and my mum didn't actually know anything about what I did when I was around their house, which I didn't realize until a lot later. But I used to play with all their trolls, all their dolls, all of this kind of stuff. And I didn't have any of that at my house, which is interesting to think about because I had boy like it was everyone was boys. So we just had boys' toys, right? And then my sister came a lot later. So um, I remember actually like my sister being born and just being so fascinated and obsessed with my sister. Um, I think that was the first element of gender envy that I had. If I
That's so
think about that.
interesting.
Mm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. This is why I love this conversation. It just like takes you, it feel like it feels naughty. It's like a therapy conversation that we're gonna broaden.
Well, hopefully we'll bring up lots of nice stuff, but it does, it's designed to encourage people to reflect and also encourage our audience to listen to stories a little bit deeper and get to know people more. What are some of your you've shared some of your earliest memories. What's perhaps one of the best anecdotes that you've heard about yourself growing up?
Um, so the best anecdotes that I've heard about myself. Well, my mum was always very like talks about me being the one that was the easiest. Like I was always my mum's like confidant and the reasonable one or like the friendly one, the one that like was really sociable. I was just not hard.
Mm.
Um, that's how my mum talked about me. Um, so yeah, I don't know. In terms of anecdotes, I remember, like little stories. Um, I was really into like the school play and stuff like that. So I remember, I don't know why there was like a nativity, but then there was a role for the mayor, and I got to sing the mayor's part. And I don't know if the mayor is like a role in the nativity, but anyway, it was, and it was like quite a good like role in our kind of C of E primary school. And I remember loving, like, I was awful at singing, I think, but I remember like loving having like a part and singing and being in like a what felt like a play, a kind of a musical type role. So I was always very into performance and and kind of theatre. And I was also really good at football. I was
Were
I was
you?
I know it's surprising, but I won tickets to go and see Northampton Town play because I was like the best at football in my school and all of this kind of stuff. Got trophies and I would really love football and I really love being good at football when I didn't feel like I should be good at football. Like you kind
Mm.
of told, wasn't very, I don't know, macho,
Yeah,
but I was better than all of the other boys at football, and I just enjoyed that.
that's brilliant. I love that. Are you still a football fan?
It's interesting because I love watching football. I know a lot about like football. I very one point in '98, kind of had the Panini sticker album. I covered the whole thing. So that was my era. I remember following Alan Shearer from Blackburn Rovers to Newcastle United, which I said was because I liked I liked the kit. So I was like I was like, oh no, I'm changing my allegiance because I just like the look of this kit more. But really it was like I just fancied Alan Shearer. So I was like, yeah, I followed football for multiple reasons.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a football fan, but I totally buy that. Do you still see little elements of Little Marty coming through now in terms of the kind of like the performance side of it and actually being front and center and kind of the entertaining side?
Yeah, I think maybe they're coming. Actually, that's really interesting. I think they're coming out more because I feel like my teenage years, I definitely kind of went into myself and
Mm,
dissociated a lot more. So I think I lost that. But I definitely feel like I'm connecting more with that now and like feeling kind of good about being seen.
mm,
I think that's what performance is about. You know, you have to be comfortable being seen in the world and people hearing you.
yeah,
And I think for a long time I was really scared to be seen.
yeah,
And that kind of came about during my teenage years. So I think, yeah, there's probably a parallel now of that kind of that joy of being seen and
yeah,
performing coming back through now when
yeah.
I'm feeling more comfortable with my identity.
Yeah, and I think probably, when I think about, I talk to lots of other queer people about this. And as teenagers, we kind of do withdraw into ourselves because you're going through a lot of realizations, a lot of doubts and stuff. And you go through this period of not fitting in, of not belonging. So you grow up in this squad where you belong and you're this
Mhm.
confident, you've got this confident little Marty who's great at football and outdoors. And then you kind of go into these teenage years, which are really difficult. And I know that I withdrew for many, many years. But now that I feel a sense of belonging because I've created community, I've got people around me who love me and who accept me for me. Do you think that that feeling that you belong because you've kind of come into yourself, you've kind of who you are, and you've got this identity and this backing of people that absolutely bloody love you?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I do really believe in surrounding yourself with people that uplift you and celebrate you and see you. And I think there's a process of kind of identifying who those people are and actually really just trying to shake loose people that are not doing that well for you.
Yeah,
And I've definitely experienced that. And I think that's painful as well when, you've had friends for a long time as well. And you actually just realize that, yeah, that not, people don't necessarily want to celebrate you. They maybe feel jealous or something, or like there's
yeah.
something, and it's actually a very human thing and you need to fight it.
Mm,
But I find that the best people to surround yourself with are the people that see you and that want you to succeed, and your success is a reflection on their success,
yeah.
and I find that I've met more of those people. I mean, like you, right? I've met more of those people more recently.
Same, same.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a loss that comes with it, but there's a joy that comes with it when you meet a new person that brings that to you.
yeah, and yeah, people like Jude Guatemaki as well,
Yeah,
like absolute bestie.
absolute hero of mine as well. So you both are. Marty, tell us just to go back to little Marty. What were you like at school?
What's I like at school? Um, I was quite kind of nervous at school. I was like fearful. I was anxious the whole time. Um, I was bullied at school.
Mm.
Um, I was smart though. Like I was really smart at school. My grades didn't suggest that, but I was because I was really distracted all the time. I was distracted about my own identity, um, struggling with the idea of like, why don't I find girls attractive? Or like at that time, just feeling like this doesn't feel right. I don't feel like, and this sounds like an ego-y thing, but like I had lots of girlfriends. I had lots of girls that I went out with. And I think it
Mm.
was because I just had no fear around it and because I wasn't that interested in it. But I didn't know what that was supposed to feel like. So I had a lot of confusion actually around what I was supposed to be and how I was supposed to show up and what expectations like my peers had of me, my parents had of me. And I ended up constructing this identity. I remember like really clearly redesigning my walk.
Okay.
And I would like focus, it was like 10, 15 minutes walking home, and I would like focus on walking in a way that other boys were walking in
Yeah.
order to try and not be bullied.
That's it. I think we definitely overcompensate as queer people in the way that we speak, the way that we move, because anything that's a bit different is suddenly a target.
Mm. And I was like really like punishing myself that if I can't
Mm.
master this, it's my fault that and it's, yeah, there was just lots of moments like that. And I had friends like I was really good at making friends through, I mean, it's a very stereotypical thing, but like through humor, like I was very funny and people liked me. I had a lot of people that liked me. So um, bullying was there, but it wasn't crippling.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I had good friends around me. I was confused a lot. I was very anxious. I was distracted. I wasn't focusing on my work that much. I got kind of like B's, C's, a D. I definitely didn't get what I could have got in terms of my GCSEs, but I was so looking forward to leave school. Like I was counting down the days. It felt like
Yeah.
school went on forever, and I was so happy when I could finally get out of there.
What happens next for you following school then? College, uni?
So I lived in a small town, so it's quite far away from like a college. So the only option really was to do A levels at the school that I hated.
Right.
So I started to do AS levels there and I dropped out after the first term because I think at that point I just finally just couldn't do it. I just couldn't be in that environment and I couldn't be myself. And at this point I was coming to, a really strong realization that I was gay and I needed to like embrace that and come out. And I just was like, I can't come out among these people that I've spent like years with pretending to be somebody else, like constructing a different identity. Um, but then I couldn't afford to go to college because it was far away and I couldn't drive. So I had to learn to drive. So what I did is I took 2 years out and I went to work at McDonald's. So at 16, I was working at McDonald's and earning, I think something like £4.16 an hour, something like that. Um,
I remember those crazy salaries of teenage jobs.
Yeah, so I was like doing that and I was working so many hours, working really late. Um, I'm sure it was illegal, like 12-hour days, like coming back in 8 hours later. Um, but I saved up enough money to get a really banged up Ford Fiesta and I learnt to drive and my mum helped me with some of the driving lesson costs of that as well. And then so I finally had my car and I'd learnt to drive and it was so 2 years later I was able to go to college. And so I would drive to Milton Keynes. And yeah, I went to college for 2 years then and did moving image BTech. And the first day that I showed up at that place, I showed up as myself.
I love that. How did that feel?
That was amazing. Like, I think there's this element of you are so excited about being yourself and showing yourself and being seen, that you find moments to share it.
Mm.
So, when girls are kind of gathering around and talking about, oh, Ryan Gosling's really hot or this and that, I'm like, yeah, yeah, Ryan Gosling's really hot. Like find an opportunity to like drop in that like, oh, I find Ryan Gosling hot. And then people just looking at you a bit funny. But it was strange how many people didn't pick up on it. Like I was trying not to, I was not being explicit, but I was just being me,
Yeah,
in that space. And these people didn't know me. So like they can just know me as gay from the start. And it felt easier that way.
right.
Rather than coming out, it was just being with new people.
That's nice.
Um, so yeah, that's what I did. And then I did my final major project was actually um in advertising. So it was like a perfume ad is what I created for my final major project. So it shows you how early the advertising element kind of came in.
I love that. And you stuck with it.
Yeah. I've still not
Amazing.
made a perfume ad though. Like the only perfume ad I've made is at college.
Okay, well, that's a new challenge with you, but after Trans History Week, please. Um, it's all a bit linear up until that point, but you've kind of taken a break, you've gone to college, you've kind of discovered this sense of self. What happens next?
Hmm. What happens next? So yeah, like I said, so yeah, I finished college, and I went to uni. So I went to Bournemouth University, um, which I remember going to see them. They were the only I got six offers because you could do like a thing through, is it ACAS? I can't remember.
UCAS.
UCAS. Um, but you could just apply for six different places, and I applied for six different places. I kind of visited three or four of them, and Bournemouth Uni was the only one that put a condition of an interview on giving me an accepted place, and it was the one that kind of had the highest number of points that you needed to get in. So I just remember thinking like, oh, you're playing hard to get. Okay, I want you more now because you're playing hard.
Think I
So
did the same.
yeah, so I went down to Bournemouth, and I remember they have yellow taxis in Bournemouth, and when we kind of parked up as well, a squirrel ran out of a bin. And I was like, okay, Bournemouth has squirrels instead of rats and yellow taxis like New York. Like Bournemouth's actually, pretty cool. And it was by the beach and like, oh yeah, no, and they had a great course. So I went and did advertising and marketing communications at Bournemouth for 3 years and, met lots of amazing, wonderful, kind, clever people through that. It was very competitive. I think that was the thing I got from that. Such a competitive nature being at uni. Um, like people would, there was only a certain number of books like in the library of a certain one that were told to go and research. So then people would go and get them, and then it was like, oh, who's got the books? Like I need to read the book, and there's people holding them. It's just really,
Oh,
really,
wow.
it was really competitive. Um, I hated that. I absolutely hated that.
Do you think that caused any of your drive now to kind of like be getting yourself out there? Because you are such an innovator when it comes to the way you write, the content that you put out there. Do you think that kind of like competitive streak has egged you on a little bit?
Oh, thank you, Neil. I think so. I think definitely for the first decade of my career, the competitive nature of that uni experience translated into my career. And it was all about our cohort of, this is how I viewed it anyway, like our cohort going into the workplace, like who's getting promoted first, like who's earning this, who's at this agency, and there was always that kind of feeling that like, how am I doing in relation to others?
Mm,
Um, and it's really deeply unhealthy. But it's what I felt. It's the way I kind of saw my value or validated like my achievements.
yeah.
Um,
Have you eased up on it now?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I just it doesn't fulfill you ultimately.
Mm,
Um, yeah, achievements are great if you're happy, but they were achievements where I was achieving things, but I was ultimately not happy in a lot of what I was doing. And actually, work was a huge distraction from me, from like actually um, kind of thinking about what, things that I was absolutely like avoiding, which was probably, I didn't know at the time because I just absolutely didn't think about it. But gender identity was a huge thing going on for me. And I didn't know because refused to think about it. And from such an early age, I'd put it in a box that I could never touch. And I'd forgotten the box existed.
And now you're doing things on your own terms now, right? Working for yourself, you're choosing things. Do you think that giving yourself that space kickstarted your gender journey?
Yeah, it was the pandemic, really. I mean, again, I like to be a stereotype. So it was, yeah, a combination of starting to just find my voice independent of the environments that I was in and actually let go of the fact that achievement had to look and be a certain way and then start my own business. So that was like before the pandemic, right? I just needed to be out. I just felt like the toxicity and the pressure and like the warping myself out of all shape just got too much finally. And I just needed to be free of it. So I started to end up doing things that really expressed the fact that I needed to do something to break free of these constraints I put around myself. And starting my own business was an expression of that without me realizing that it was probably connected to my gender as well. But it was the pandemic that really kind of unlocked it for me. Um, and it was just because I was not around people as much. So that was awful because I'm such a sociable person and I prop myself up with like relationships and who are you in unless you're someone in relation to others?
Mm,
And um I was I was like pride was proud of how I could adapt to any situation and any person and ultimately persuade them to take this campaign, take this strategy. So I kind of built this kind of what I now look at as people pleasing into a superpower. So I had to really undo the idea that like this was positive
yeah.
all the time.
And I
And
guess, yeah, having that quiet time probably gave you space to really getting people's noise and that people pleasing out maybe gave you the time and the quiet, that silence that we sometimes need to figure out what's going on.
yeah, I think so because my one thing I always avoid, I still do actually, is silence. So I listen to podcasts every night. I I don't allow my brain to just be silent and like so meditation and things like that. I'd love to get into. I know it would be really valuable for me, but I've I've always had this thing of just not listening to my brain. So actually therapy is is the thing that really unlocked things for me because it was dedicated time talking about yourself with someone that was guiding you through it, which I'm great at because I like speaking with people. But I was never going to do that on my own. I was never going to spend time kind of really thinking about how I was thinking about things. And also, I was really fearful to do that because I spent a lot of time when I was 13 and 14 just like intensively being trapped in my thoughts and spiraling about what it meant to be gay, that I deliberately distracted myself from being in that space again.
Mm. What was the moment like when you had the realization of, and I know we're diving a little bit off topic here, but the realization that, you were gonna come out and take the first steps of your gender journey?
Yeah, what was really interesting for me is that I realized I was bi, and then the next day I realized I was non-binary.
Okay.
That was really
Quick,
interesting.
quick succession.
Quick succession. And it was never like um, it was never like, oh, I know I'm trans and I'm keeping that to myself for years, and then now I feel comfortable coming out.
Mm.
I was very much like very pro trans rights, and I was really advocating for myself and making the space in the world better for myself, but my unconscious self. And So when I actually had a realization that, oh, maybe I am trans, um, it wasn't there wasn't ever a thought of like, well, I'm going to keep this to myself. I was immediately open with it with everybody.
I love that.
Um, but it was but it was definitely a journey, but to understand kind of really unpick it all, and it was quite emotional and difficult and all of those things. And also I didn't fully embrace the idea that I was trans initially. Um, I would say, yeah, I'm non-binary. I'm just like not like 100% male. Like it's just a little
Yeah,
bit, non-binary. And then I just had to really, I think it's like this, you know, internalized transphobia is heavy. And I think there's an incredible amount of we're in a transphobic society
mm,
generally, like the same way that we're in a racist society.
yeah,
So it's it's really unpicking that internally and becoming I'm so proud of being trans and I love being trans. Um, but there was definitely elements of like shame to unpick
yeah.
because you get taught that it's shameful.
That's
Uh,
it. It's ingrained. It's ingrained in us. We see it.
yeah.
Yeah. And your journey shows that every journey will be around sexuality and gender is just so unique. Yes, we share our commonalities, but every journey is so, so unique. Thank you for sharing. Was there um was there a moment where and going back to kind of like, either career or life generally, where you experienced something that felt like a failure that maybe kind of has led you to where you are now?
Hmm. Felt like a failure. Um, well, I suppose we touched upon it. The idea of your career being one way and you progress, and you go up and you get promoted, you get promoted. I wanted to be a chief strategy officer, and I feel like that was like what I was heading to. It was going to take me a decade or more to get there, and that would be I've made it kind of thing. And I absolutely just got closer to it, got really close to it, and then was just looking at my boss, who was chief strategy officer, and just being like, I don't want your job. I don't want it.
Yeah,
And so is that idea of what I'd seen as successful suddenly got shattered in my head really, and I just realized I was chasing the wrong thing, and it's quite devastating to feel like you've been chasing the wrong thing for a long time. Um, so I look back at that as like a moment of kind of yeah realizing realizing that, and that's a pivotal point.
yeah. But here
So
you are, but here you are now doing what you want to do.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I suppose other points of failure. I mean, just constantly failing to like, you feel a sense of failure, like that you're failing being a boy, a man, all these things, right? Um, what you're told you should be, and you try your best to be, you ultimately aren't. And there's a lot of shame in all of that. Um, so yeah, like that sense of failure, right? And then that's really harmful to like feel like that shame from society placed upon a person.
Yeah.
But that
Expectations.
yeah, but that ultimately shapes you into it's trauma, ultimately traumatizes you, but it does shape you because you're able to like come out of that and then really embrace yourself because you don't want to, you see that that was the wrong thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm very tired now, as you know.
Life is tiring. Life is tiring. This is such a beautiful conversation, and I'm really, really grateful for hearing your story. And hopefully, you said earlier that you love being trans, and for me, I love being queer. It's a fundamental part of me. And but there is that unpicking. There's that unpicking. There's kind of you have to get to a point where you can own all of that and live out and proud. But I don't think it ever completely goes away.
Mm, yeah. I think as well that the big thing that for me, talk about shame as well. Like just before I started my own business, and I've really rarely, if ever, talked about this, but um I whistleblowed like on the misogynistic culture at the agency that I was at, and it went crazy. It was in all of the papers, and I just watched that agency react in a way that I didn't expect. I expected it to then all be changed for the better, but actually it all just kind of rallied around and like didn't acknowledge the culture and things like that. And that was a moment of, again, me like trying to change things. It was early change making in a really kind of very blunt way
Mm,
that caused me to then start my business. Actually, that was a catalyst for me starting my business. It was a catalyst for all of the change making that I've
yeah.
I've done now was having the bravery to send that to the press.
And I guess therefore shaped your destination in inclusion, really,
Yeah, because I
in
just
wanting to
really
create.
saw, I was just really like thrown by like how awful this culture was and how nobody could see it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, there's so much to change here.
Yeah. If things need to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and this was post Me Too movement, and it was just advertising industry was just not getting the message.
Mm, brilliant. I mean, and look at the change. You are such a change maker, such a history maker as well. I love it. Talk to me about someone who shaped you along the way.
Oh, people. Um, I think people who have shaped me along the way, I would say I had like people that were queer and more senior to me. I was fortunate to have some people in my life in the industry that I was in that I could look to and that looked to help me and support me. What I do think was interesting about that. So I think number one, like I feel like there's a real problem. I love Trans History Week for this reason, but there's a real problem within our community of there's shame pushed upon us to not build intergenerational relationships. Um, because there's this, again, it's a bit like this social contagion lie, right? We've got this other lie that is like anyone LGBTQA plus is a paedophile, or all these horrible words, a deviant, a
Mm,
pervert. Like, and so for a deviant and a pervert to be in conversation with someone a decade younger than them or a child, like is, well, absolutely, I'm not going to even have a conversation with that person because I don't want to be called those things. I don't want to give any ammunition to those things. And just something as simple as a conversation could do that. So I think what it does is it's really, really, really damaging because it means that we lose those intergenerational bonds and that informational kind of value, and imparting wisdom down generations in our community because of that lie, because of that shame. So I really love the idea of dismantling that shame and like creating these intergenerational bonds within our community. And Trans History Week certainly
yeah.
is trying to do that.
Yeah.
And all that to say that I had, this intergenerational bond with somebody within my community. But what's interesting is you can also get really, really the worst advice from those as well, because I was told, to be less gay at work by this person because they had to in their
Yeah.
generation to achieve. And so it was they were trying to give me advice to succeed. And so it was coming from a great place, but it was absolutely the wrong advice to give me.
Yeah, slightly outdated advice, but
Yeah.
there's we know there's a beauty in intergenerational wisdom, but ultimately you do have to find your own path as well. So
That's true. And in terms of like queer mentors or I just think my chosen family, people like you, people like Jude, people like Nancy Kelly, it's the people around me, the people I surround myself with now that, I mean, Jude, for example, Trans History Week wouldn't be what it is without Jude. It wouldn't be what it is without Jamie Wareham either, who's the founder of Queer AF, because it's about both of them encouraged it to be bigger than what
yeah,
I was imagining it to be and what I thought that I was capable of creating it to be. Jude is just someone that never thinks that they can't do something. And that's powerful because then they go and do. and
Yeah.
it's incredible. And you're like, wow, maybe I can do as well.
Yeah.
And just seeing them and then seeing their confidence
Yeah.
and their their creativity, and then surrounding yourself with that, and then
Yeah.
them pushing those onto you, like saying, you could do this. Of course you could do this. Do it like this,
Yeah.
do that. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I think so people like it's peers really and chosen family. Um, yeah,
All
that's
the way.
that's where
All
I
the
get.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
People that inspire and empower you. Absolutely. Does happiness and success look and feel like you thought it would?
Um, I think well, I didn't think that I could be happy and queer. I
Right.
didn't think that I could be happy and trans. So no, it doesn't look like how I thought it did, but it's so much better than I thought it could be, right? And actually, the only way that I can be happy is by being queer and trans and being very like comfortable with that, and having everybody know that that's how I'm happiest.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we touched upon it as well before. I think the thing I realized when I was just really not happy in my career, despite my career objectively being great and very successful, um, it was just deciding to pursue what I'm interested in
Mm.
and what drives my passion, and not think about money, not
Yeah.
think about anything other than that, and just trust that pursuing your passions and your interests will work out. And so I think that's how I've cultivated being much happier in all parts of my life, is just focusing on that first. Um, yeah, and it was scary to do that, really scary. And I think there's a massive element of privilege in that, because I'd managed to build enough of a financial cushion to
Mm.
feel like I could jump off that cliff. And yeah.
You did that work. You did that work. My final question for this segment is looking back, what are you most proud of so far?
Oh, what am I most proud of? I mean, there's so many things actually, and in the last few years that I'm really proud of. And so I was really proud to become the joint CEO of Advertising, which is the advertising industry's LGBTQIA plus advocacy organization, and to also become that role at a key moment when, we saw Dylan Mulvaney in that Bud Light ad, and then this whole go woke, go broke narrative. And last year was exhausting
Mm.
advocating for our community, but we managed to galvanize 120 organizations to stand for the community and divest from disinformation in the media. Um, Something like 6.9 billion advertising spend represented by the organizations that committed to doing that. So I felt really kind of proud of that achievement, and like
Yeah.
having led that organization at that moment.
Yeah.
Um, Also creating Trans Plus Adland, that community for trans and non-binary and intersex people. Um, and I feel really proud of, I think just generally it's the movement building. So starting Trans History Week, um, it's kind of like, yeah, so well also so the becoming the first trans columnist of Campaign magazine was like, I don't know how to geek out about this too much, but like I would read Campaign magazine at college when I was doing my final major project for that perfume ad, right? Campaign magazine is the magazine for our industry, and I've always read it. And at uni we had it, and I think it was a daily magazine back then, and so I'd read it in the library because they'd have a copy. And there were always these faces in there. There was always these things that I'd read in there. And then the idea of being in it is just
Yeah.
insane. And I remember having a few moments where I'd written for it and been in it. But then being a columnist, and their first, like, I think first queer columnist as well, is absolutely insane to me. And such like a proud moment because
Yeah.
of how much I held that magazine in such high regard at the time. And then like yeah, Trans History Week, like I said, um, I like this idea of I think writing generally, right? I didn't say this before, but and this is another maybe surprising thing, but I really embraced my identity as a writer last year, where becoming that columnist and like writing about, ad spend funding an increase in hate crime and writing about the need for Trans History Week. My kind of change making, my activism manifests itself as writing. Writing seems to be the way that I communicate best. But when I was at school, I couldn't write. I was really bad at essays. My mum would constantly like help me with my homework and say that it wasn't good enough and try and help me to like reword things. And I was really bad at it, but I wanted to be good at it.
Yeah.
Um,
And look at you now. You're fucking amazing at it.
for me, it's just so strange because I get so stressed about writing because I feel like I can't write
Yeah.
still. But I love writing.
Once you get started, though, I find this like the thought of it at first, I'm a bit like, oh, but then once I get started, there's absolutely no stopping me.
Yeah, so the idea that like I write regularly and write like an essay's worth every month for some reason or other is absolutely insane because that was the scariest thing for me
Yeah.
to write and to be told I need to write 1,000 word essay. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think I'm very proud that that is the reality, but I can't
Yeah.
believe it.
You should be proud. You should be proud. I really hope you are. I know I am. Marty. The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Marty, are you ready for some quick-fire questions?
Yeah, hit me.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Um, I'm gonna say, can I say like theatre instead?
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, the musical.
Okay.
Yeah, Groundhog Day, the musical. It's just such a great musical for reminding yourself to be in the present and to be grateful and to help others. And it really just makes you cry.
Okay. I've not
Um,
seen it. Have you seen the movie?
yes, I've seen the movie, the Bill Murray movie. I
Yeah.
mean, the musical just takes it on a whole other like emotional
Okay.
moment, and yeah, it's well worth seeing. And also like The Art of Asking, the book by Amanda Palmer. Have you read that?
No.
So I love that because essentially it's all about asking. So ask for things that you want and need, and you'll be surprised that people actually want to help you. And I think there's a lot of shame that people have around
Mm,
asking for
yeah.
things. And I absolutely embrace that philosophy. It's one of the things that has helped me so much is I just ask people for things
Yeah.
without shame.
Yeah. I've had to learn to do it, particularly last year in the height of burnout. I had to learn to ask for help, but it made it so much easier. What's a saying you live by and one that you want to put in the bin?
Um, so I know it's like a very used one in our community, but I think it's a brilliant phrase. So nothing about us without us.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So that because I mean we're doing this project Trans Plus Solidarity Alliance, and it's all about like having trans people in the room, in spaces, educating our MPs, making those connections. It's absolutely living this mission of like nothing about us without us.
Yeah, I first heard it when I was working with someone who was a professor of education, and it was the work that she focused on. Nikki, wonderful friend, Professor Nikki Martin, working with autistic adults,
Mm.
and that was when I first came across it, and I've heard it more and more since, and it just really speaks to inclusion.
Yeah, I think it's just when you hear it, you're like, obviously, but
Yeah,
then to actually look at what you're doing. Oh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, inclusion, collaboration, co-production. It embodies all of those things. What's
Mhm.
one that you want to put in the bin?
I think you'll like this one. One for the road. Um, I had a friend that used to say this every time we met, and I just knew it was coming. And I'm just not a big drinker anyway, but it just basically meant like another half an hour and another drink, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna feel awful in the morning. One for the road is like, oh, and I was just dreading to hear that phrase.
Okay. Right, in the bin, in the bin. What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
I mean, Hormone Journey is an adventure. That's, that, and it's kind of fun. Like it's a fun adventure. Like
I mean, we've spoke about it, and you've shared a bit online about kind of changes that you've seen in your body and stuff. It must be,
it's so exciting. Like it's magic. It's
yeah,
amazing that you can, change your body
yeah.
in that way.
Euphoria, euphoria.
Yeah, euphoria. So I mean, that's like, yeah, it's a huge adventure and it's super exciting. And yeah, I think there's such joy in that journey. And there's a lot of, talk about, it's hard to access the hormones and things like that. And there's
Mm,
a lot of things around healthcare that are very difficult and accessing, having good doctors and like, the misgen all of these things, the misgender
mm.
stuff. But ultimately, it's so exciting to become yourself. Um, so that's a big thing for me. And Trans History Week, oh my God, the
What an
journey of
adventure.
Trans History Week, the adventure of it is it. I love Trans History because like, someone like me and you, right, ADHD, always need new things. Trans History Week as a vehicle can just become so many things, and there's so many opportunities that come from it.
Yeah,
Um, you know, so much, and we're only in year one. This is just going
yeah.
to continually create opportunity,
All
and
all the beautiful people we've met and worked and partners and
yeah,
yeah,
like you end up speaking to like, Goldsmiths Uni, and we're speaking to kind of academics to do with history, or we're speaking to these kind of artistic institutions, or we're speaking to, all these businesses, and they've got their own unique histories, and they want to talk about this, and it
yeah,
just creates so many connections,
yeah.
so many possibilities, and that is exciting. And we're still on it.
Well, this is going to be a long journey together. I'm excited. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
So I say this a lot. I'm a proud attention seeker.
A proud attention seeker. Tell me
I,
more. Tell me
I
more.
I think it's funny because we get told as queer people that we're attention seeking
Yeah.
because we're unusual to society's eyes largely. So it's like, oh no, you must be doing that for attention.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, it is just true for me.
Yeah. I'm
I
fucking
like,
own I'm owning it.
it's just true because yeah, I like to be heard, I like to be seen. And also, like my whole career is about trying to strategize to get brands' attention.
Yeah.
Like I work in advertising. Of course, I'm an attention seeker. That's literally my job role.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a proud attention seeker. You can't shame me by calling me attention seeker. I know I am.
Okay.
I do.
I love it. I called my Substack Neil Talk, and the tagline is because I've got a lot to say. And it's just owning it. Owning it.
Exactly.
I love that. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you coming up? Obviously, Trans History Week, super exciting. What else? You got any holidays or anything like that to look forward to?
Oh my God. Yeah, I've booked out some time in my calendar, which I haven't decided like where to go or what to do yet. But I absolutely need a holiday. So I'm really looking forward to creating some sort of holiday for myself this summer.
Yep.
I really just want to blank out like a month. I feel that exhausted from everything. But yeah, I think we should talk about Trans History, right? Because we've got, the main event coming up, which you have been all over and creating, which is on the 7th of May at Clifford Chance, and that's really exciting. And then we've got all of this amazing content that's
Yeah,
been
po
produced by Queer.
content, poetry night.
Yeah, the poetry night. I mean, all of these different trans creatives that are being platformed and paid for their creativity. I'm so excited just to see people's reaction to it all.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Any other projects?
Oh God, don't give me another project.
No,
Uh,
okay, not for a while. I'll get the holiday first.
no, no, no other kind of immediate projects. I
Good.
feel
Keep
like,
it like that for now. Keep
yeah,
it
I
like
feel
that.
like Trans History Week is just going to give birth to like so many
Yeah,
projects. So
absolutely.
I'm very focused on Trans History Week.
Perfect, perfect. And obviously Trans Solidarity Alliance as well. You touched a little bit on that earlier, but
Oh
super
yeah, no, I
excited to
should.
hear what's
I should. This I mean too many things. We're actually doing a panel on hate crime, so I'm chairing a panel in Parliament in
Oh
May.
wow, that's so exciting.
Did you know this?
No.
So yeah, so it'll be our third panel as Trans Solidarity Alliance and the first one that I've chaired. And yeah, it's about kind of platforming trans and ally experts in this space so that we can educate our MPs on what we need in order to tackle the hate crime problem for queer people and also trans people because it
Yeah,
keeps on climbing. And obviously, I have thoughts on it in the ad land space, but um, this is focused much more broadly on like how do we tackle this as a society and how do we kind of stem the early stages of why this is happening in the first place, which is the rhetoric that we're seeing, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm looking. I
That's
mean,
so
as weird,
exciting.
as weird as it sounds, I'm looking forward to that because it's a
Yeah,
necessary, important conversation, and I'm excited to be able to be part of making that
yeah.
happen.
History maker all the way. I love it. What brings you joy, Marty?
What brings me joy? Um, so all of I mean, pizza, Haribo,
Same.
a cream Thai curry, food largely brings me joy.
Food,
Um,
nice.
creativity, just creativity. That's what I love about why we've invested all these trans creatives. I love seeing the writing come through as it's developing. I love seeing the podcast audio as it's being like developed. I love the early sketches of how
Yeah.
that I love seeing all of that and steering it and kind of
Mm,
helping guide it a little bit. So,
yeah, the process.
and also we've got a huge awareness campaign um, coming out for Trans History Week. So we're going to be in outdoor sites across the UK. And that's a beautiful piece of
Mm,
creative as well. So
yeah,
I'm super excited about that. Brings me joy. But new ideas brings me joy. The other thing as well, I really, what brings me joy, it sounds weird to say, but uncomfortable topics.
mm,
Like with my column, I love leaning into uncomfortability. So I wrote
yeah.
about how um like the state of sponsorships at the moment in our
Oh,
community
it's tough.
and you know intersectional justice and like all of these different really like tricky things to kind of navigate and what rainbow washing is looking like historically, how it's evolving, the different meanings. These are uncomfortable topics within our
Yeah,
community, and it's really interesting for me to I find it brings me joy to kind of lean into those uncomfortable
yeah.
topics.
Oh, I love it. I always say get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Oh, I love that.
We
Yeah. Oh,
need
that's a
to.
nice phrase. Yeah, I should have said
Yeah.
that in your
I,
phrase. Fire.
yeah, it's one of my faves. What takeaways do you have for anyone listening wanting to carve out a career in inclusion or just create something inclusive?
I think, yeah, I think two things, if I was going to give any advice, would be things that I've learned are number one, just absolutely follow your passion and your interest, and the rest will like match with that. Um, two is just do it. And actually, the third one I learned more recently is perseverance. Like your idea will not get catch hold straight away.
Yeah,
It very rarely does. You need to put a lot of work into it and just persist, and it will take off. It took me a long time to get people to be interested in ad spend funding an increase in hate crime.
yeah,
And if I'd have given up after 6 months, which it felt like I was getting nowhere, then yeah, it wouldn't have got to where it got to. So I actually just think stick it out longer than
yeah,
everybody else will. That is the big, and I never did that. I never stick things out. But like the only times I've done it, I can only stick things out if I'm interested in them. So you need to find something you're interested and passionate in
yeah,
order to stick things out
yeah,
and you get the double whammy of persistence and what you're interested in. And then you'll create a thing that excites you
yeah.
and people care about.
I'm definitely feeling right now that right now with the House of Happiness, a year and a half in,
Mm.
we're slogging, and we're starting to see, but it is perseverance and it's not always easy. It can be bumpy. I've got a final
Yeah.
question for you. What words of wisdom or encouragement do you have for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I just said them really, but it's like
Mm,
believing that you can do it.
yeah,
Because I think I see, it's interesting, like having gone through therapy, you kind of see other people locked in unhelpful thought patterns now more easily. And a lot of people just don't believe they can do stuff. And then they have their critical voice overpowered, keeping them down. Um, so I'd say like quieting that critical voice a little bit and like encouraging that motivational voice to be louder. Just believe that you can do it. And also, failure is not a bad thing. I get rejected a lot. There's moments of failure. Just embrace them as learning. Don't feel that they're a barrier. And the last one is very connected to you as well. So surrounding yourself with people who just believe in the same thing and want to celebrate and uplift you and help you and then help those people too. So, your house of happiness, I'm, endlessly in awe of what you've been able to achieve with that. And, we support each other in our different missions, right?
we
And
do.
that's that's really rare. It's really rare to find people that genuinely are there to celebrate and uplift you, to find those people.
And cherish them.
Yeah, absolutely. Cherish
Yeah,
them.
I
Give them
absolutely.
give them badges and free slices of pizza and all that stuff.
I'm excited for pizza on Monday. I'm loving my badge.
Yeah.
Marty, it has been so nice to take this time out from the crazy to get to hear your story. Thank you so much for being a guest on Pause and Rewind, and I'm bloody love you. You know I do.
Thanks. I love you too. And thanks for having me in my really tired, like 11 days out state.
You look fresh as. I'll speak to you in a bit. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that conversation could have gone on all day. Marty genuinely shared so much, and I think that Pause and Rewind really is about taking a moment to reflect. And we had a chat just after recording, and just we saying how we don't often take those moments to do that. It is beautiful to hear Marty talk about little Marty and how little Marty is now present more than ever. In that feeling of belonging and creativity and just that happiness. Marty really the joy, the euphoria around being trans, from gender journey and hormones through to showing up and just being able to be someone's authentic self, and the importance of that. And that definitely shines through in many queer stories. I absolutely love what Marty is putting out there into the world, particularly with Trans History Week, but more beyond that with the Trans Solidarity Alliance. And Marty talked to the work that they're doing with Jude, and just the difference that this is making, to make the world more inclusive and aware when it comes to trans people, trans rights, but also, as we spoke about, let's move beyond seeing trans people, minorities as barriers and challenges and statistics and numbers to the actual people, that just want to live their authentic lives. But Marty, bloody love you. As I said, amazing spending that time with you. And I hope that if you're listening, you enjoyed this conversation and tune in for more, and find out more about Trans History Week over on Instagram at Trans History Week.